Hi, everybody, and welcome again to the Musical Innertube. I am Don Rooney.
I am John Timpane.
And John, today we have one microphone, but several guests. We have Matilda from the Tom and Jerry Show. We have Luann Loud from the Loud House. We have Patrick Vanderweer from Ellen Gregory. And they all come in the package of Cristina Pucelli. Cristina, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled.
Cristina, if you haven't guessed by now, is a voice actor. Would you like to give us a few voices that you do?
Sure. Okay, so I play Luann in the Loud House, and she's a jokester. She tells puns and jokes. She's 14 years old, and so she'd say, "Hey, Lincoln, what do you call an old snowman? Water." Get it? So that she's notorious for laughing at her own jokes and saying, "Get it?" I also do babies, so. Let's see. I can do little boys. Okay, so from Alan Gregory, Patrick was Alan Gregory's best friend, and he goes up to Alan Gregory at the lunch cafeteria, and he says, "Hi, I'm Patrick. Want to have lunch with us?" And then, or I could be a more gruff boy, like, "Yeah, I love to skateboard. I can totally do an ollie." And then, like, "I can do an old lady. I can do an ollie too, kid. Just give me that skateboard. Oh, I hope I don't break a hip. Ooh, I can skateboard too. Let me have a go at it."
These are just totally awesome, I have to say.
Oh, thank you. I could do monkeys. Like, I played Hazel on Doc McStuffins, and she doesn't want to go to the sleepover because her trunk leaks when she lays down, and it's super embarrassing.
Which kind of is John's whole reason for living at this point.
Yes.
Don't go to the sleepover, John.
Yeah. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to start, my Depends commercials. So,
Hey, if it pays, who cares?
This is it.
Valtrex, Depends, whatever. Yeah.
Cristina, I was just wondering if you could tell us how you got involved in all this in the first place.
Let's see. Acting in high school and in college. And I always had a very high-pitched voice. And somebody said to me, "You should get into animation." And I grew up in Orange County, California, and my mom has a very lovely sounding voice. And so she found a woman that taught workshops in Orange County for voiceover. And my mom decided to take the class with me. So we both took the class together. And, we learned all about voiceover, and I cut a demo tape, and I ended up getting an agent out in Orange County. But I didn't really pursue it at the time. Every once in a while, I'd get thrown like a non-union job for $100 or, a little radio gig or something like that. But I didn't really pursue it. And then after I went to college and I ended up getting a degree in art history, after I graduated, I was like, you know what, I really want to get back into that. I want to get back into voiceover. So I took workshops. Animation workshops, commercial workshops, all kinds of workshops. And I took improv, and I cut a demo tape and another demo tape, because that first demo tape wasn't really so good. It was a package deal where at the end of the class, you get a demo tape. And, I cringe when I listen to it today. I'm like, oh, that was so bad. I cut a demo tape. I sent it out all over town, and I asked my animation teacher, and I said, "Hey, can you listen to my demo and tell me what you think?" And he listened to it, and he said, "Well, I don't like this. Get rid of this, and da-da-da-da, and da-da-da-da." And, at the time, I was working in a restaurant, and I saved up all my money for this demo tape, and I just started to cry. And I'm like, "Look," I said, "don't you think it's good for my first time out?" And he's like, "Cristina, you don't have a second chance to make a good first impression. It needs to be professional and competitive the first time out." And so he's like, "Here, this is my friend's name. Go to him. He will help you out." So I went to his friend. I spent more money. And I ended up getting something that was really pretty good. And I sent that out. And within a week, I had an agent. So, I'm glad I listened to his advice. You do have to spend some money to be in this industry, but it is an investment, and you will eventually make it back.
You have to look at it as an investment. It's money that you're putting into the business that you're creating, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What do you think the friend of your teacher did for you in making that a much more successful tape? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think some of the music wasn't right. The purpose of a demo is kind of to show your bread and butter. And also, it's supposed to sound like commercials and work that you've already done. That's in the can. They're little bits of little things that you've done. So that other person that helped me get my demo tape into better shape took some of the non-union gigs that I actually did in Orange County. I had them on a cassette tape, and he spliced those in. Those were real spots that I did. It should, you should land on something, establish it, and then move on. Land on something, establish it, and then move on. And it's got to sound like a real commercial. So it's got to have the music, it's got to have the quality. And it shouldn't be too seamless, because you want it to sound like it was recorded at different times in different places. So if it's too smoothed out, it's kind of a tell that, this is your first go around and you did all these in the same booth.
I was just going to say it would sound inauthentic, because it would sound as though you just went into a studio and just recorded it, just sat down and say, okay, I'll do a bunch of clips, but they'll all sound pretty much the same.
Absolutely. And I did, the tape wasn't bad. The second tape that I did wasn't bad, but he's like, that music isn't good. I don't believe you in that spot. So a lot of it was direction. A lot of it was music. It was the arrangement that it was put together, that made a difference.
And your teacher was right, I think, in saying that this is a very, for lack of a better word, cutthroat business. You have to be good from day one, because there's so many people out there that are looking for voiceover work.
Oh my goodness. The pool is huge. I send out auditions, and I might be up against 300 people, and you don't even know whether or not you get listened to. You hope, because you start to establish relationships with casting directors and whatever, that you might stand out and they'll go, oh, let's listen to what Christina's done. You know what I mean? But is there enough time in the day for them to listen to every single audition? Do they only listen to the first 10 minutes or 10 seconds? Do they scrub to the middle of it? We're up against a huge pool of people. And sometimes, like for commercial copy or whatever, they're like, we don't, man or woman. So now your market, it's double the amount of people that you're up against, But I send out auditions. I blow a little kiss and say, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and it will come back to me. And sometimes you might not be right for that audition, but the casting director might remember you and go, ooh, let's call them in for this. They're perfect for this.
And I've heard from casting directors too that when casting a part, they have the people that they know and they know what they can do, and then they have these new people. And sometimes the tendency is, well, I'm going to hire somebody that I know that they can do it, then take a chance on this new person that may not be able to do it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They're going to hire the people they know, because, somebody like Gray Delisle, who is a fantastic actress, or Tara Strong or whatever, they know that they can produce 20 different voices. Granted, the way we're paid, it's like you can do, 2 voices and then get a 10% bump for the third voice or whatever. So the more voices you do, the more you'll be paid, but they'll know that they'll always deliver. So it is a risk to try somebody new, and the casting director wants to look good. They want to hire the right person. They're dependent on you to do a good job as well.
That's interesting. Yes, you have to look at yourself as a partner in that to some extent.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how do you get versatile enough to do a number of different voices? Is that something that you have to practice on? Is that something that you have to work on?
Yes, absolutely. I'll tell you, most actors have a stable of characters that they do. And then when we get a breakdown, it will have a description of this character and a picture. And pictures are so great to me, because you can see whether or not they have an overbite, or they have braces, or they're fat, or, or they're skinny and lanky and weird and awkward. Pictures tell you so much, but then they'll also give you a paragraph. And it's like, okay, so I might have a character that would kind of fit into that, but I'm going to tweak them a little bit and make them a little more nasal, weasel or give him buck teeth, So we all develop a standard kind of stable of what we do well, and we can tweak it from there. And it requires a ton of practice. You got to be able to pull these characters out, at the drop of a hat. The other day I was in a session and they're like, oh, you're going to be the funeral director selling a casket. And I was like, oh, they didn't tell me that. And then I just had to come up with something, She's really salesy, So, I mean, you kind of on the get-go, you just got to be ready.
That's a question I had also is, for the most part, do you get scripts ahead of time or is some of the work walk-on?
We do get scripts ahead of time. Sometimes it might be the night before. Hopefully it's a couple days before so you can go and make notes. But yeah, we do get them ahead of time, thank goodness. There are some actors that are so good that they just literally just open up their script and then they still make magic. And I'm not one of those yet, or I don't know that I ever will be, but I like to read and do my homework and and it is acting. There's a who, what, where, why, when. It isn't just a lovely voice. You got to bring that character to life. And even in commercial copy, you got to bring those words up off that page. It might have the most lovely, warm, juicy voice, but if you don't know how to bring that copy off of that page and connect to the listener, it's not going to do you any good.
I also think that there's some versatility, I want to say, even within a character. If you come in and you're doing a character, I've seen things in cartoons where that character, first of all, has to sing within that character, or that character is pretending to be another character, so you have to do that character doing another character's voice or something. There's all sorts of layers to this.
Absolutely. I, and also like subtext as well. There are a lot of layers.
I have a question because I was looking over your resume and you've played so many parts, and something I've always been curious about is when you're in the studio doing one of these bigger pictures, it isn't always you, right? There's going to be people directing. There's going to be other artists you might be hitting off against. Can you talk about that experience? How often do you get to do that?
Yes. So right now I'm in a show called The Loud House. It's on Nickelodeon, and I play one of 10 sisters. So it's about a little boy who has 10 sisters, and we all record together. And it's magic because you can literally react. Acting is reacting, and so we're reacting off of their performance, and it brings it all to life. And it's like you're using your imagination and you're playing and you're living in this environment with these phenomenal actors that are bringing their characters to life, and it's so much. I mean, I've done work both ways, obviously, but when you have other actors to feed off, it's really golden. It's really something special.
And I imagine that you would rather it be that way than do something like coming into a studio. I once had to do this where you come into a studio and have to record your half of a telephone conversation, right?
Oh, yes.
There's not another person on the other end of the line, so you have to make it persuasive, and it can be difficult.
Absolutely, because sometimes, in a conversation, there's ums and ahs, and as we're witnessing today, that people speak over each other, and that's what actually makes a conversation realistic. So it is a little bit harder when you're supposed to be having a conversation with somebody and they're not there, and that's where your imagination comes in. There are times when a casting director will feed you the line right before, which helps, absolutely helps.
And I'm wondering what shape direction takes, because it's acting like anything else. So of course there's going to be people talking to you about shaping your performance. And I'm wondering, can you talk about that a little bit and how, if at all, it differs from being directed when you're doing a stage play?
Yeah. Well, there are different styles that different directors do. There are some that will give you nothing but line reads, and you kind of got to bite your tongue and do what they tell you. They're the boss. They're the director. There are others that will give you it in acting terms that say, you know what, let's have her a little more quiet and a little more seething. Let's how about on this line? The purpose of this is this. So I mean, there are different casting directors that are different directors that have different styles, and you just kind of have to go with it. Yeah, I don't know. And as far as um, voiceover, you don't have to project as much because the microphone is right there. But there is a certain physicality to voiceovers. Like I had an animation teacher that told me, you do the character physically and the voice will follow. So if you hold yourself in a certain position, and you hold your mouth in that position or whatever, the voice will follow. So that way, when you're going to get back into that character, you do that stance, hold that physical position, and that will help you get back into that character when you have to do it again.
Sort of like when actors say that the costume helps them get into a character.
Absolutely.
Same sort of thing.
So
I noticed also. I also noticed that I've seen where Disney particularly will videotape you while you're doing the voice because they think it helps the animators portray that person better on when they're drawing.
Absolutely. And there are people that do facial capture, excuse me, where it's almost like mocap, but they put all the little dots on your face and they're literally, taping you, and they're going to use your exact movements for that character.
My goodness, what is that like? That's crazy.
I haven't done that. Although I just recently had an audition where they wanted me to film myself doing the VO audition so they could see what my face looked like and how expressive I was. But it's funny because, a lot of on-camera actors and, especially today, we are up against so many talented voiceover actors, but now celebrities are in the game and, and they're getting jobs. YouTubers are in the game, it's like because they have this influence, so-called. And, but sometimes celebrities will get in the booth and they won't be able to do voiceover because they're so used to doing like a subtle look, but that doesn't come across a microphone. It's like there has to be some kind of energy behind it to be able for the audience to read what you're doing. And sometimes celebrities can't do it because they're so used to the camera up close watching them and a look here. I'm like, a camera can't see your look.
No, and it's a different thing, isn't it? It's a different form of acting. It's not going to be. It's not one size fits all. I think it's really fascinating what you're bringing to this. That there's a bodily thing. There's it's posture. It's assuming the character physically in order to be able. It is acting. It is 3D.
Oh, absolutely.
3D, yeah.
And for people to say voiceover is not acting, come and do it. Come and do it. Let me see you do it. Yeah.
I have heard that the celebrities are asked about doing voiceover work, and I'm sure celebrities are used, especially in big motion pictures, because it's a draw. But by the same token, I've heard them say things like, "Oh, it's the easiest job I ever had. I don't have to get into makeup. I just walk in and I do it." They make it sound almost throwaway, and to me that sounds demeaning. Actually,
it does, and they don't consider it acting. Some don't consider it acting, and granted, we don't have to do the hair and makeup but there is an artistry to this, and it is 100% acting. I mean, well, okay, so somebody said it was 90% acting, 10% voice. So, it's smart to take acting classes. I would say take improv classes. You got to be smart and quick on your feet. And, I'll tell you, some of the most remarkable actors that I've ever worked with are voiceover actors. But I'll tell you another funny thing is sometimes I'm with my agency for on-camera commercial, and I'll go out for an on-camera audition, and I'm such a spaz. Like, I'm so animated in real life, I'm a spaz. And so, like, the director was just like, whoa. I don't know. He's like, we need to tone that down. So I am kind of stuck in my way of doing things. And that when I want to try to do something on camera, I just look like a maniac.
Let's talk also, you said you got into voiceover originally because you had a high-pitched voice. And I've seen on your resume that you play a lot of children as a voiceover artist. Are you worried about being typecast at all?
Not at all, because, well, I mean, it's funny because, I do have a young sounding voice. So when they want somebody older, they don't always come to me. But I can do adults as well. But I love doing kids. I love doing little boys. I love doing children and babies. It's just, there's a sense of wonderment and just a lovely, charming aspect to it. And, I work on a show that has, a couple of real kids, but they've aged out. Like the show is going on now. We're recording our 5th season, and it's like we're on I think our 5th Lincoln. So that's the main character, and it's like little boys end up going through puberty, their voice drops. They no longer have, it's like they have experience in the world. So it's no longer coming from a place of wonderment. There's, you can hear it in their voice. And so we've had to recast because, the voice got lower. They can't produce that anymore. And it's sad because I love you. We grow attached to these kids. These kids are like our family, but they're super talented. So they'll go on to do other things. But it is kind of sad when we see our kid brother grow up and move on, and then we have to get used to a new kid.
It's amazing to hear that you can actually age out of a voiceover part, but I guess it's inevitable, isn't it, in certain
yeah. Exactly. And that's the beauty of, Nancy Cartwright, who has done Bart Simpson for how many years?
Yes.
She will continue to be Bart Simpson forever. She didn't age out of that. And, there are some studios that prefer to hire children. And then there are some that are like, no, we don't want to deal with it because you're going to have to deal with, a teacher on set and all the child labor laws. And it's not that that's that much of a pain, but, sometimes an adult will be able to take your direction a little bit better because they can understand on a certain level.
Now, you also do voices for video games. How is that different from doing voices for animation?
They're a lot more physical. So you're fighting and dying and running. I mean, you do all that in animation as well, but you're not dying. They wouldn't kill off a kid because that would be traumatic, right?
Not recommended.
Yeah, sometimes I audition from home, and right now I'm also recording for broadcast from home because of the pandemic. But I have to tell my neighbors, I'm like, look, sometimes I'm going to be auditioning for a video game. So if you hear me screaming or yelling, he's got a gun or shoot, or, like sometimes they're like, oh, she's being burned alive. And I'm like, if you hear something like that, just know I'm okay. I'm just recording. I have to warn my neighbors not to call the police. But video games, I sometimes I'm sweating and you're like, huh, yeah, ha, and you have to take damage, and so you are physically doing it. And
I was just going to say that must be very tiring. It must be very physically tiring.
Oh my goodness sake! Yeah.
And what kind of characters do you? Can you give us examples of the kinds of characters you might do in video games?
It's interesting. I still do a lot of little girls. Like I was in Metal Gear Solid 4, where I play Sunny, and she's a young girl, and so I played a younger, and I didn't get to fight in that. She cooked eggs, and but there are other ones.
So you were flipping eggs. You were like, flipping eggs like that.
Big eggs. Take that, eggs.
Yeah, I'm gonna beat you.
Yeah, exactly. So she was more of a homemaker figure.
She was just a little girl cooking eggs on a spaceship or a flight, and but she was also a genius and would invent all kinds of gadgets. A lot of times video games too really do damage to your voice. So a lot of actors will only book their video game time to be on a Friday. So that way they'll have the weekend to recover because, there's a lot of screaming and there's a lot of guttural and just grit involved in video games.
When you play video games, you come to crossroads where you go one way and the game goes in one direction, you go another direction, and the game goes in another direction. Do you have to record all those different possibilities?
Yes. So just in case they push a button to go that direction. There's one where you die and
there's one where you don't.
Yes. And there's like one where the character, the player goes one way, and you're like, oh, good choice, or you're like, no, I wouldn't do that. Depending upon the scenario.
Right. Yeah. So if it's that kind of game, you might have to actually guide the user or warn the user against a bad move. Mm-hmm. That's tremendous. Isn't it hard though? Okay, let's say you're doing a character and the character gets past the main line of fire and they run into the woods and they're safe. And then you have to go back and and record where they get riddled with gunfire. That must be difficult to do. But, I just wonder. Yes.
Yes, you run out of breath and you're like, okay, well, hang on a second. Let me have a drink of water. You're in control. You got to say, okay, let me catch my breath and then have a drink of water and then let's go back to that. Because you need to be in a different space, depending upon what had just happened. But a lot of voice directors will also save a lot of the screaming till the end. Which is very smart, so that way you don't blow out your voice. If you're in a 4-hour recording session, you don't want to blow out your voice in the first 10 minutes because you're not going to be any good.
It's like movie acting in the sense that it can be very non-consecutive. You have to, you don't do one thing and then do the next thing. You'll do things out of order or opposite things.
Absolutely, and that's why I prefer reading the script beforehand.
Yes, I imagine
but video games, we really don't kind of get the script beforehand. I remember when I was doing Metal Gear Solid, I did get a script, and it was literally a huge binder, huge, and it was like, there's no way I'm going to read all that, But for video games, you generally don't get the script. The voice director will say, okay, well, this is happening in this scene, and this you're taking this much damage. It might be mild damage, heavy damage, death. So
heavy death.
Yes.
What would be the difference between mild damage and heavy damage? That's what I'm interested in.
Mild damage might be, and then, like where you're that close to death, but you'll make it.
Now, you said you have an agent that helps you with your animation work. Are you still doing live action? And if so, is that a completely different agent, a completely different sphere?
I am represented by the same agent for commercial on camera as well. But she has a whole department with a different agent head that kind of handles that department. And I've been with the same agent. This is the same agent that I had when I cut that demo tape. So I've been with her probably 20 years now. She's not a huge agency. She's more of a boutique agency. So, but she's been in the industry for years. She's well known. She's, she's a tough broad, and I have a lot of respect for her, and I'm thankful to her.
How important is it to have a good agent?
It's extremely important because union jobs come through an agency. So the casting director will send your agent the copy and say, send me your top 5 people, your top 10 people. And so they'll put out the call to their people, and they'll basically send you an email with the script and the directions and how to upload it or where to upload it. And so you wouldn't get the opportunities if you didn't have the agent. I mean, there are online programs now, and most of them are non-union that you can get jobs through. But, eventually you're going to want to join the union, and you need an agent. If you want to make a living at this, you need somebody on your side to get you the auditions and somebody to go to bat for you.
That's the next question I had. Are you making a good living? Do you have long, slow spots where you don't get anything, and then busy spots where you're almost too busy?
Absolutely. I within the last, 7 years, I quit my day job. So I was at it for a long, long, long time. And, sometimes you'll book a job and it'll be great. And then you might not book one for a long time. So this industry does not make sense. There's no, you don't know if when they listen to your tape, they had gas after lunch. You know what I mean? They're like, no. You know what I mean? Or their ex-wife's name is Cristina and they can't stand her. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many different factors. Or you could have been the one, and then one person in the room was like, no, let's go with this other one. You know what I mean? They could turn around the whole room. There are so many chefs to please. It's a miracle that anybody books anything. Because the saying was that you would book 1 in 10 auditions. And that was a long time ago. I think that might have been in the 80s or the 90s. Now it's like maybe 1 in 100. I booked a show with Jonah Hill called Alan Gregory, where I played his little best friend, Patrick Vanderweel. And I was... we only got picked up for 7 episodes. And so it wasn't enough to quit my restaurant job. And now I was working fine dining and I was working a couple shifts a week. But, it's very scary to take that leap from your day job to just to trusting. It's a very scary thing because there's no guarantees. I've been fired from jobs before, because somebody was like, well, no, the head guy that controls the money wants a little boy in that party, doesn't want a woman. And it's like, well, I know I did a good job. I know that I brought life to it. And I know I did a great job. But if his mind is made up that he wants a boy to play that part, I can't argue with that. And especially if he controls the funding for the project.
That's an interesting point. And I think that you put your finger on something that everybody in the media community knows about, because generally speaking, everybody's a freelancer. Everybody.
Yes.
And that what happens to make a movie or a video game or something, or even a podcast, really is a group of individuals, all of whom somehow get the gig, and they come together and they are there possibly for the only time as an ensemble to make, you know what I mean? It's very fly by night in a way.
Absolutely. And I consider myself so lucky. I mean, I'm doing well. I knock on wood, and you have to be consistent and you have to just keep at it. And, there are a lot of people that go home or that give up, and I am constantly learning. I am constantly influenced and inspired by so many people around me. And I'm like, oh, I want to learn how to do that. Or, I'm taking singing lessons. I can sing in character because it doesn't have to be good. But, when I'm singing as Cristina, it's a little scarier, So I'm constantly learning. I listen to kids. I listen to babies. I get hired a lot for babies. It's just, you got to just keep going, and you got to keep believing in yourself, and you've got to open your imagination and play and just keep at it, because this is not for the faint of heart. This is not, it's like I send out tons of auditions, and there are things that I just think I am perfect for, and I never hear back. And you'd never know. Sometimes they have callbacks for jobs, and that instead of 1 in 300, you're now 1 in 10, 1 in 20. So your odds are better. But not every time they have callbacks. And it's like, one time a casting director said to me, she's like, oh, Cristina, I just have to tell you, you were always one of the last 2. And then I was like,
right. That's supposed to encourage you.
Make me feel good. But at the same time, it's like, oh, so you never know. You might be one of the last 2. You never know. But at the same time, you're like, why not me?
I know that there are voice people like, who am I thinking of? Frank Welker, who does all of the animal voices and that sort of thing. Could you specialize like in kids and get more work that way?
Absolutely. There's a guy named there are quite a few women who do children. Absolutely. And I am one of them. There are some that do them more realistic. There are some that are more cartoony. But you can absolutely specialize. Frank Welker does all of the monsters. D. Bradley Baker does a lot of creatures. You need to be a squirrel. You need to do a cat, a gerbil, or a bird, or there are people that specialize in monster voices. Yes. And creature voices.
And I'm trying to think of the direction of that. All right, you're an angry squirrel. Give me angry squirrel.
Yes.
Here's your motivation.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody took your nuts.
I mean, well, now and that would make me distressed. That would distress me quite a bit. I'm just going to say right here.
I would be an angry squirrel at that. Yes. Indeed.
Well, in our generation, both Don and I think, cross paths with Dawes Butler and June Foray. And I don't need to tell you who those people are, but those are people who ended up doing hundreds and hundreds of voices that they did for years. I mean, there are people like that who are just sort of gods of the industry. And and June did everything from fairy princesses to Rocket J. Squirrel, didn't she? And, and those are amazing people, really
those
amazing.
Those are legends, Mel Blanc.
Oh
legends.
My God, yes.
Yes. And, we're all indebted to them, and in fact, it's interesting because, Looney Tunes and Mickey Mouse and Tom and Jerry, and they're all having a resurgence now. So, Mel Blanc used to do all those voices, and now they hire, probably 5 or 6 people to do the voices that one man used to do. And there are people that specialize in that. Eric Bauza does a ton of Mel Blanc stuff now, and he's just amazing. My jaw it just drops on the floor at the amount of talent that these people have. It's and I consider myself to be extremely lucky to be able to work with them.
I know that for the reboot of the Animaniacs, I think they brought back all the original.
They did. They did. Tress MacNeille and Rob Paulson and Jess Harnell. Yeah. So they did. Thank goodness they brought back the originals. If they're still living and they've still got it, why go somewhere else?
Exactly. Right.
There are a lot of people who are interested in voice work. I will say that. What sort of advice could you give somebody who wants to get into the biz?
Definitely take acting classes. Definitely take improv classes. There are a couple resources, if I can mention them. D. Bradley Baker has a website called iwannabeavoiceactor.com, and it's pages and pages, and it answers every question you could have about getting into voiceover. And also there's something called the Voiceover Resource Guide, which is available online now. And in there are lists of classes, lists of demo producers, list of agents. So, I mean, take classes, take voiceover classes, take, animation, take commercial classes. You don't want to make a demo tape until you are ready and you want to go to a professional. You want to, and shop around. Listen to these people's demo tapes. Does it sound like a radio commercial or a TV commercial that could be pulled off the air right now? Does their stuff, does it pop? Will people listen to it? Will people lean in and go, oh, it's got to capture the listener.
You were talking about paying to have your first successful demo cut together. I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there who will charge. When is it appropriate to pay somebody for something, and when is it maybe you're thinking, maybe this is a little too steep, or this person is just a gold digger?
I would say that anything that, at the end of 8 weeks, you cut a demo tape. Steer away from those kind of workshops. I would, branch out and do individual workshops, talk to teachers, ask them when you're ready to cut a demo tape. And also look at the Voiceover Resource Guide has the prices that people charge, whether it's per hour or per demo. It could be $1,200, it could be $2,500. You'll be able to find your price range, but sometimes you get what you're paying for. So go online and listen to what their demos sound like. You're representing yourself, so it is worth the investment. It absolutely is.
Well, Cristina, this has been fantastic. It's been very informative, but it's also been kind of fun. I mean, who doesn't have fun with somebody who can do several different characters?
And that's what it's all. That's what it's all about, is having fun and giving yourself permission to play and use your imagination. Just and for people who want to get into it, just keep going, keep practicing, listen, learn. Just always be a student. This is a pretty amazing field, and I consider myself lucky to be making a living at it and to be a part of this group. And yeah, don't give up on your dream.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And thank you for listening to the Musical Innertube. Now, if you'd like to find out more about Cristina or get in touch with her, check out her website. It's Cristina Pucelli, all one word, spelled CristinaPucelli.com. CristinaPucelli.com. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, the email address is musicalinnertube@gmail.com. Again, musicalinnertube, all one word. On Twitter, John is @JTimPayne, Don is @DonRooney9. And look, I get to do more website spelling. Our webpage is Musical Innertube, that's musical spelled with 2 A's, .libsyn, spelled LIBSYN.com. The Innertube available on Amazon Music. If you're a member of Amazon Prime or subscribe to Amazon Music, just type Musical Innertube in the search box, and there we are. We're also available on Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio podcasts. Like us and give us a good review on any of those platforms. And for those of you nostalgic about Halloween and Thanksgiving, head over to the musicalinnertubeplayers.libsyn.com for our radio plays. Again, that's Musical Innertube Players, all one word, .libsyn.com. and some Christmas stuff is on the way. And as always, thanks to virtual band Car Radio Dog for providing our theme music.